next year.
Oh, I say.
Spin me a dream woven silver and gold, from sunshine and shadows and days long ago, where people are memories and stories unfold. Willows, the tales you have told me. Wind in the willows, you just seem to know who you can turn to and which way to go to unwind your wondrous mind. Wind in the willows, take me back.
The World of Leather Winter Sale. Save money on leather suites, sofas and chairs in every style and colour. Discontinued models must be cleared. Interest-free credit on everything over £500. See us on the North Circular near Hanger Lane, the South Circular at Clifton's Roundabout, 156 Tottenham Court Road, Morden Road, Wimbledon and Reading.
I'm an ordinary cat in an ordinary house. I'm nothing special, never even caught a mouse. But give me cat and meat VIP and see what it does for me. It's the best nosh I've ever had, 100% meat, now that can't be bad. A very important pussycat, that's me, every time I get cat and meat VIP.
New VIP, 100% meat in firm jelly, preferred in tests to any other cat food.
See if your very important pussycat will agree. The best tasting cat food is cat and meat VIP.
That's it then, Griffin. You tell them.
All right, I'll tell them right away. Got some wonderful news for Midland personal account customers. It's free banking. Yes, as long as you stay in credit, you get free checks, free statements, free auto bank withdrawals, and free standing orders. You don't have to pay a penny for any of them. Way! So if you're not getting all these free from your bank, you know what to do. Talk to the Midland. They don't call us the listening bank for nothing. Most colds mean two big miseries.
This stuffed up nose and sore throat.
This double problem needs double action lockets. Penetrating menthol vapors help clear your stuffy nose, while the medicated liquid center soothes your sore throat. Soon you're feeling like yourself again.
That's better.
Double action medicated lockets help clear your nose and soothe your throat. In new menthol eucalyptus too.
It has to be. It can only be.
There's only one coffee called Nescafe Gold Blend. Every precious gold bean helps create a special blend that tastes so rich, so pure, so smooth. It can be no surprise that only Nescafe make a coffee called Gold Blend.
That's the richness I like. The taste that could only be Nescafe Gold Blend.
Nescafe Gold Blend.
Match Ian Ferguson with Rangers, Dave McCreary with Newcastle United, Gary Bailey with Manchester United, and you're a winner in the SO football match. Go for goal where you see this sign.
capsule. Try Tramil 500.
Top entertainment for Christmas Eve on Thames. At 7, where's Eamon Andrews off to? In festive guise.
We'll see you on Christmas Eve at 7 p.m. for a special seasonal edition of What's My Line?
At 8, it's all aboard Jim Davidson's Falklands Special. At 9, fun with Dick and Jane, out of work.
Does that mean we're going to be poor like the Waltons?
This is only a temporary condition.
You still haven't told me how we're going to make the payments.
This is a sticker.
Are you kidding?
And at Coronation Street at 7:30, it's entertainment with a festive spirit for Christmas Eve on Thames.
And then earlier, of course, at 6:35, we pay another visit to the Crossroads Motel. Now let's go to Studio 7, find out what's happening at 6.
Hello, tonight in Thames News, the church comes under attack on Christmas Eve. Are they being heartless to the homeless?
Murder at the golf course, the body on the 17th tee, and the deadly toy gremlins they banned from the market.
And in sport, Jackie scores a first and full marks with her full twisting Sukahara. That's it.
The news at 5:45 with Martin Lewis.
Extradited terrorist Dominick McGlinchey gets life. The Italian train bomb attack, 17 dead, over 100 injured. The actor Ian Hendry dies at 53. And the 85-year-old lady who's chasing Father Christmas on Concorde. Good evening. Dominick McGlinchey, once Ireland's most wanted man, has been jailed for life. He was caught after a shootout with police in County Clare last March and became the first terrorist to be extradited from the Republic to the north. McGlinchey was sentenced at Belfast Crown Court for what was described as the savage and ruthless murder of a 63-year-old grandmother. Police say they'll now scale down their investigations into at least 20 other murders.
McGlinchey, who was surrounded in the dock by 6 prison officers, stared impassively at the ceiling in the courtroom as the judge convicted him. The only sign of emotion from McGlinchey, once branded Ireland's most wanted man, was when he nodded and smiled at relatives in the public gallery as he was being led away to start his life sentence. McGlinchey had all along denied he was a member of the IRA gang, which riddled Mrs. Hester McMullen's County Antrim home with gunfire in an attempt to kill her son, a reserve policeman. The judge described it as the savage and ruthless murder of an elderly and defenceless woman. The main evidence against McGlinchey was a set of his fingerprints found on a getaway car used by the killers. The conviction of McGlinchey, the first terrorist suspect to be handed over from the Republic to Ulster, will be seen as a significant boost for extradition. And already loyalists have called for an all-out drive by the British government to have hundreds of other IRA men extradited from what they call their safe havens in the south. Earlier at the same court, the province's supergrass system suffered another major setback, the second in less than a week. 6 days after the acquittal of 35 Republicans when the Raymond Gilmore Supergrass trial collapsed, 14 loyalists today won their appeal against their convictions on the evidence of a UVF informer, Joe Bennett. Only 4 of the men were freed, however. The other 10 are still being held on evidence from other informers. 3 appeal court judges ruled that their convictions were unsafe and unsatisfactory and had been based on a wrong decision by the trial judge on a question of law concerning Bennett's credibility. Ivan Little for ITN. Belfast.
Italy is fearing a new wave of terrorism after the bomb on the Naples to Milan Express, which killed 17 and injured at least 120. The government has promised action, and tens of thousands of Italians have joined protests against the attack. They mourned in Bologna, Florence, Milan, Rome, and other cities. At least one Briton was hurt, Teresa Butting, aged 24, from Brighton. The bomb went off when the train was between Florence and Bologna, passing through the 12-mile-long San Benedetto tunnel. 7 groups have said they did it, including some on the far left and the fascist Black Order.
The explosion appears to have been timed to cause the maximum amount of death and damage. The train was packed with holidaymakers on their way to ski resorts in northern Italy. It was about 3 miles into the tunnel when the bomb went off at the back of the train, wrecking carriages and hurling passengers through the windows and onto the tracks. Police think the bomb was hidden on a luggage rack. Suitcases were blasted 20 yards down the tunnel and the carriage roof was blown off. But most of the passengers got out alive.
The glass was breaking and glass was just
flying around everywhere, and there was a lot of blood. And it took some time to find out how serious the situation was.
The death toll may rise. Many passengers are critically ill in hospital. This morning, the Italian president, Signor Pertini, went to the scene, angry and upset. It's still not clear who's responsible for this. 10 years ago, the Black Order claimed responsibility for planting a bomb on another express train in the same tunnel. 12 people died. But this time, they've been joined by several other terrorist groups, all claiming responsibility. The real worry now is that the terrorists have attacked such a vulnerable target so close to Christmas, and that other attacks may follow in the next few days. Phil Roman, ITN, San Benedetto, Bologna.
Ian Hendry, star of 7 television series, including The Avengers and The Lotus Eaters, died today in a London hospital. He was 53. His checkered life included 3 marriages, one to the actress Janet Munro, a bankruptcy, 2 years on the dole, 2 throat operations, and superb screen performances in over 50 films.
One of these shy lads, are you, Stevens? Well? Well? You what? One of these cads who can't make up his mind whether he's a boy or a girl?
I'm married, sir.
Are you now? And who's who in your little partnership?
Earlier this year, Hendry cancelled a 3rd throat operation to take the part of a drunk in Brookside.
All right. All right. I can take a hint. But you just remember, you won't rest. I'm going to get the best legal minds in Britain.
Meet any of them down the social, do you?
All right, yeah, all right. But you just remember, he who laughs, 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 laughs.
Ian Hendry in his last television performance. And we've just heard that the British actor Peter Lawford, a former brother-in-law of President Kennedy, has died. He was 61. He'd been in hospital in Los Angeles with liver and kidney problems. His wife, whom he married in July, was at his bedside. He was a leading member of Frank Sinatra's crowd of friends known as the Rat Pack, and starred in the television series The Thin Man. His films included Easter Parade and Exodus. The Lancashire miners' leader, Sid Vincent, has flown home but denied that he cut short his controversial holiday in the Canaries. He arrived at Manchester from Tenerife and defended the trip to reporters later.
The only time that my office is closed in 12 months is Christmas. That's why I chose Christmas on this occasion.
Why did you decide not to tell your staff where you were going?
I told my staff where they were going.
They didn't seem to know?
Oh, my staff knew where I was going, and they give you an evasive answer.
Why?
Because they're in my employ.
Why didn't you want us to know where you were going?
If you tell your editor what to do, he'll tell you up the road, mate. As simple as that.
Why didn't you want anyone to know where you were going?
In what shape or form?
Well, why did you not want your staff to tell us
Well,
where
what's
you were
it
going?
got to do with you, where I were going?
We were just interested, actually. We thought perhaps it was...
You're always interested. Well, I'm interested.
Do you regret going in?
No, I don't at all. No? It's 18 months since I had a holiday, and I've had a 5-day break. As simple as that.
Some of your members are now calling for your resignation.
They're not at all.
200 working miners at Rawdon Colliery in South Derbyshire are fighting an underground fire which has closed 2 coalfaces. They'll break their overtime ban by working over Christmas. The pit employs more than 1,000 men.
The blaze is 250 yards below the surface. Mines rescue teams say it's one of the worst they've seen. In less than 10 hours, 2 of the colliery's 5 coalfaces have been lost. But miners from all over the South Derbyshire coalfield have been drafted in for firefighting shifts. And NCB officials say that jobs won't be lost. It could have been a different picture if this coalfield was on strike. Unlike some similar incidents in North Derbyshire and Yorkshire, NUM members here are volunteering to fight the fire. From this evening, the overtime ban is to be ignored and teams of 50 men will be working 6-hour shifts until Boxing Day to try and contain the blaze. Andrew Simmons, ITN, Rawdon Colliery.
The Soviet president, Konstantin Chernenko, missed the state funeral of his defense minister, Marshal Dmitry Ustinov, in Moscow today. The president's known to have a chest complaint, emphysema, and Red Square was bitterly cold. NATO ambassadors stayed away from the funeral because of the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan.
With the temperature for the funeral at 22 degrees below zero, Mr. Chernenko had good reason to stay indoors. The ceremony lasted 90 minutes, a bitterly cold ordeal for the large crowds that attended in Red Square. The urn, covered in flowers, was marched slowly to the Lenin Mausoleum, followed by the Ustinov family. Mr. Chernenko's frailty and the loss of his close ally, Marshal Ustinov, is bound to intensify the leadership struggle inside the Kremlin. Among the speakers today was Ustinov's successor as defense minister, Marshal Sokolov. His appointment is seen as a stopgap measure which is unlikely to affect the balance of power. Some of the jostling for power was evident as the procession moved on. The officer in charge, seen here on the left of the urn, appears to be telling one of the Kremlin favorites, Mr. Mikhail Gorbachev, to stay in line, and he doesn't like it. The officer then signals to Mr. Gorbachev's arch-rival, Grigory Romanov, to take up his place alongside the urn on the right. The position of Politburo members at these occasions is seen in the Soviet Union as a sign of their status. It's clear some minds were already thinking of the forthcoming leadership struggle as Marshal Ustinov's remains were placed in the Kremlin wall.
Violence has hit the Indian elections as polling begins in the world's largest democracy. In Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi's constituency, 6 people were injured when trouble started. His sister-in-law and arch opponent Manika accused his party of intimidation. And in the constituency where Rajiv Gandhi's cousin is standing, the independent candidate was murdered.
The watery Indian sun had barely risen by the time the security men and police patrols were in position around the New Delhi polling station. But they were kept waiting 3 hours before the Prime Minister and his wife Sonia swept in from their official residence a mile away. Rajiv Gandhi was literally following in the footsteps of his late mother Indira. Throughout her 17 years as leader, she had always cast her vote in this little village schoolroom. For all his charming shyness, Rajiv now seems to be totally assured about his future.
We're feeling very good.
375 million people have a right to vote here, more than the total population of any country in the world outside China. The majority can't even read or write. A dab of indelible ink ensures they don't vote twice. They register with a thumbprint and stamp a cross against the party's symbol of their choice. It can be a mighty confusing business. In the East Delhi constituency, the ballot paper carries the names and insignias of 42 candidates, an Indian election record. Origami is clearly an essential qualification for electoral officers here, while just posting it in the box is a ceremony in itself. In the past, this colourful mixture of castes and religious creeds has invariably given one party a clear majority to rule them. Jeremy Thompson, ITN, Delhi.
Here at home, hundreds of elderly people won't be completely alone this Christmas thanks to a computer. It could also save their lives. A computer-controlled alarm system links the elderly to an old church in East London, where a group of minders will spend Christmas watching for any sign of trouble.
For the elderly and the infirm, Christmas can be the loneliest time of all. It's also when they feel most vulnerable to an accident in the kitchen, a fall, or a relapse. But Mrs. Mary Sapwell is one of hundreds of pensioners who have a unique form of help, a computer alarm, which links her to a nearby care centre. It dials her phone automatically, triggering an alarm and prompting an immediate reaction from her minders. A computer instantly provides key details: her medical record, local doctor, and next of kin. Within seconds, a minder is on her way to help.
I mean, I could go on the floor, but if that thing's near me, I can press that and know that somebody's coming. And when you know that somebody's going to come and help you, this is, you know, you're sort of restful, you're contentment, really. It's a great comfort to people, I think.
At present, some 350 pensioners are linked to the system. Next year, 500 more will be added every week. Eventually, every local authority may have one, revolutionising care of the elderly and helping take the fear out of old age. Kevin Dunn, ITN, East London.
The main headlines again. Dominick McGlinchey, once Ireland's most wanted terrorist, has been jailed for life, and the actors Ian Hendry and Peter Lawford have died. And finally, Santa won't be coming down the chimney for one 85-year-old woman tomorrow. He'll chain his sleigh to Concorde and whisk her off to Lapland for her presents. She'll be one of an elite group of Christmas Day flyers paying £800 a head for the trip.
Even at £26,000 an hour, twice as many people want to hire Concorde next year as have done this year. The latest is this Canterbury tour operator, which has chartered Concorde for a day trip to Lapland tomorrow. It meant opening up the airport in the Arctic Circle specially, bringing up a power unit from Helsinki to handle Concorde, and drafting in extra police to keep the crowds at bay. And it meant some anxiety for the organisers, especially when the response to their original advertising was almost nil. Their reaction then?
Rather nervous. I think that's possibly an understatement.
Although I think, yeah, we were still optimistic, although we were a little worried. We still thought that people would probably book nearer when it got nearer to Christmas.
And they did, including 85-year-old Mrs. Louise Tucker, whose son bought her the trip as a Christmas present.
Well, it's once in a lifetime, isn't it? Yes. And I just can't believe, I'm going to see all that. It seems so marvellous.
And ITN will be there too. John Suchet, ITN with Concorde.
Time for us to fly too. We'll have more news at 20 to 11.
To the homeless, the church stands accused. Murder at the golf course, the body on the 17th tee. Children beware the deadly gremlins that grow. And full marks for Jackie's full twisting, Sukahara. Hello and good evening. Churchmen were accused tonight of giving a slap in the face to the homeless over a land deal in central London. Protesters staged a candlelit Christmas Eve vigil. Also tonight, a claim that government cuts will force even more people out onto the streets, and a row over crisis at Christmas, an emergency shelter for people with nowhere else to live. Our first report from Steve Clark.
According to these protesters from the Paddington Community Consortium, a modern-day Mary and Joseph would face the same problems in Paddington as was once faced in Bethlehem. No room at the inn, with 800 families currently packing the area's bed and breakfast hotels on the breadline. But in Paddington's case, they say the Church of England, through the Church Commissioners, has missed a golden opportunity to help solve the problem. The consortium offered the commissioners £1 million for the site of the former Holy Trinity Church in Bishop's Bridge Road, so they could build accommodation for over 100 homeless people. The commissioners rejected the bid and now look likely to sell to commercial developers instead.
I think we were really quite upset to discover that a Christian organisation could go for profit rather than for a need which is so vivid, so desperate and so obvious, and they knew about it.
Have they told you what their reasons are?
No, they haven't told us anything.
But according to the Threshold Housing Group in South London, the situation for the homeless in Paddington and elsewhere in the capital is likely to get even worse in 1985. They say new government regulations will cut benefit and force many out of even the cheapest bed and breakfast accommodation onto the streets.
Well, it's hard enough at the moment finding a place for bed and breakfast because there are such a lot of single homeless people in London and in this area as well. It's going to be even harder in the future, and they're going to be living in worse accommodation than they are at present.
Back in Paddington, the church commissioners were unavailable to comment today on their refusal to sell the Holy Trinity site for housing for the homeless. But outside the commissioners' Millbank offices, the protesters were firm.
It's a slap in the face on Christmas Eve, and I think it'll just add to their kind of misery and desperation.
It wasn't exactly all mirth and goodwill as an operation to bring Christmas cheer to hundreds of single homeless got underway at Euston. A disused bus garage loaned by the GLC has become a temporary shelter, home of an open house Christmas. But though some local residents are among the 400 volunteers, the prospects of 6 days of festivities on their doorstep has angered others.
You've got a toilet that stood right outside your door practically, and I don't think that's on. Plus, what we pay rates are here, they're so high, it is ridiculous to have to put up with this for 6 days at Christmas time. I work all the year round, my husband works all the year round. We too need Christmas. They've got a crisis at Christmas over there, they've supplied us with a crisis at Christmas over here.
Has it affected you at all?
No, not really, no. Well, it's a good thing, providing it's done all the year round. If it's just a one-off thing, I think it's a bit silly.
A Labour shadow minister who's a trustee of the Crisis at Christmas charity shared this sentiment. He had a seasonal message for the Prime Minister.
She could provide more money for housing. She could provide more money for investment and therefore for jobs. Cutting public expenditure for homes means leaving people homeless. And as I say, there are more homeless this Christmas than at any time since 1979. In fact, 3 times as many people are now homeless as when Mrs. Thatcher came to power.
At Euston, the Christmas spirit was in evidence despite the politics and the protests. Tomorrow, volunteers will serve up more than 1,000 traditional turkey dinners. Mark Wadsworth, Thames News.
Detectives in Buckinghamshire will spend their Christmas holiday trying to identify a woman found murdered on a golf course at the weekend and who killed her. The woman's naked body was dumped at the 17th tee on the golf course at Denham.
The woman's body, battered and naked except for grey socks, was found dumped in undergrowth at the edge of the 17th tee at Denham Golf Course. She'd died either by being strangled or struck violently in the neck. She'd also been beaten about her face, but had not been sexually assaulted. Police believe her body had been driven to the site, a narrow road, up to 18 hours before she was discovered by a woman walking her dog.
She's aged probably between 35 and 40, although possibly outside those ages. She's 5 feet 4 inches tall, a white lady, medium build, dark hair. She had an operation scar on her stomach, pierced ears. We think perhaps that she'd given birth to 2 children.
With few clues to her identity, police are conducting what they call a fingertip search of the area where her body was found. Even the earth is being sifted in the hunt for evidence. Simon Neve at Denham for Thames News.
West End stores say business has been booming right up to the last minute before Christmas, even though some of the big stores, like Selfridges, were closed today. Paul Larsman reports on Christmas 84 in the High Street.
At the beginning of each year, there are more than 300 shopping days till Christmas, but that never seems to stop thousands of people buying their presents at the very last minute. Despite the rain, despite a diminished Saturday service on the trains and tube, despite even the closure of big stores like Selfridges, Oxford Street was chock-a-block today. And it seems a lot of Christmas stockings are going to be laddered this year by the likes of Wham, Bronski Beat and, of course, Band-Aid.
I think the most surprising day is today, Christmas Eve, when we thought the last days of Christmas shopping was Saturday. It's actually, again, a very busy day today, so it hasn't stopped. And it starts again on Thursday with the sale, so it goes on for some time.
Why do you think record sales have been so incredible this year?
I think this year in particular there's been a good cross-section of music, and that appeals to a very wide market. So the mums and dads are buying as well as the teenagers.
Meanwhile, at one select men's outfitters, the gospel according to Boy George was being taken to heart. What have your customers had to say about this?
Not a lot. They smiled and laughed, but I don't think they really mind.
Well, look, you're in the men's outfitting business. Do you really think this could catch on?
What, skirts? No, it's purely for fun. It's not serious.
It might be a rude question, but what's worn underneath?
As little as possible.
For example?
Nothing.
What about January? You're still going to be wearing a skirt?
Well, no, I don't intend to wear it very often. It was just for the party and for today. It's not something I'm going to do regularly at all.
How's business?
Excellent. Absolutely booming.
And booming it's likely to be for some considerable time yet. Anyone with anything left to spend and spend after Christmas can spend some more when the sales get underway on Thursday. Paul Larsman in Oxford Street for Thames News.
Well, if you're needing public transport for the sales, you should know that services won't be fully back to normal until next week. Tomorrow, Christmas Day, all public transport's closed down except some buses to the airports. On Boxing Day, there'll be no trains or London country buses, but there'll be a skeleton service on tubes and buses in London. On Thursday and Friday, all transport will be running again, but often to Saturday timetables. And a warning to motorists, Be sure to fill up your tank before tonight. Many garages are closed throughout the holiday period.
One family in London are tonight preparing to spend their last Christmas together. Aisha Corkinal and her 3-year-old daughter are due to be deported next week, but her 2 sons can stay behind in Britain. A few minutes ago, Mrs. Corkinal and friends who want her to stay in this country began a vigil in the hope of softening some hearts at the Home Office.
As in many homes across London, it'll be a family Christmas tomorrow for Aisha Corkinal and her children. But the Christmas cheer will be muted because in 10 days' time, she and her 3-year-old daughter will be deported. Mrs. Corkinal's parents are British, so's her brother, and her 2 sons who were born here. But she came to this country as a Turkish Cypriot, and despite a long campaign, the Home Office refuses to grant her citizenship, which means that next week the family will be forced to separate.
What sort of Christmas will it be for you tomorrow?
It's really bad. Very, very bad, you know. I don't know. How can I explain? It's really sad. We've been waiting all this time to hear the good news. The time come now, we heard the bad news in really special time. And the whole family is really upset.
Mrs. Corkinal is now divorced, and while she tries to build a new life with friends in Istanbul, her sons will have to face life without mum.
Well, it's sad a lot, but we can't stay with our mum. We need our mums, because when we go out somewhere and no one would take us, she might be nice to take us.
How do you think you will react next week when Mum has to get on the plane?
Terrible.
There is still time for a change of heart by the Home Office, although the chances seem remote. The family understand what's happening, but Shabnem, of course, is too young to realise that her life is about to be altered forever.
Merry Christmas!
Lindsay Charlton in Brockley for Thames News.
There's a warning today about a toy that's trying to cash in on the latest Steven Spielberg film. Safety officers in Essex say the tiny gremlins could kill, and they've already seized 50 of them. They swell to many times their original size when put in water, and consumer experts say if children swallow them, they could choke or suffocate. The gremlins are imported from Taiwan and are a new version of a similar plaything that was banned by the government last year. But the ban on those ran out just before Christmas, and Trading Standards officers want it reinforced.
If swallowed, and it looks rather like a sweet, it will expand. It will start to expand considerably. The biggest danger is that it is not detectable by means of any X-ray equipment, and therefore it can cause all sorts of complications. There was a year's ban, and unfortunately that ban ended on the 6th of December. And obviously importers have been waiting for the end of the ban. This is a new batch come in. We've never seen this type of toy before.
There are warnings on the packets.
Oh, yes.
Are you not satisfied that the warning is sufficient?
Well, I've never met a child of 5 who can read properly, and therefore I don't think the warning is really adequate for a small child. And I think at Christmas time, parents do tend to drop their guard a little. The result is that it's happened before, it'll happen again. Some child will have come very badly. Second on this, probably death.
It looks like being a miserable Christmas for a woman from Hackney whose home is like a menagerie with just about everything except the seasonal partridge in a pear tree. Albina Cruz has devoted her life and her home to animals, but now she's lost one of her pets, a dog who's virtually part of the family.
Albina Cruz has 15 cats, 5 dogs, a parakeet, 5 pigeons and 6 white doves. Quite a houseful, and that's not counting the polecat. They all get on extraordinarily well. But then there are all waif strays and rejects who found a real home with Albina and her own family, who all pitch in to find the £25 a week it costs to feed their friends. But now Whiskey, a Yorkshire Terrier they've been looking after for the last 2 years, has gone missing. And as far as Albina's concerned, Christmas has been ruined.
Well, I'm very upset about Whiskey. If someone has got him and would like to keep him, and they told me, or somebody had seen him run over, I can understand that. I would let them keep him.
All she wants to know is what's happened to him. Albina and her family are vegetarians, but they're happy to provide their menagerie with all the meat, eggs and milk it takes to keep them happy and healthy. There's a special Christmas chicken for the animals, but the spirit's gone out of the entire holiday for the families since Whiskey went missing. Tricia Ingram's in Hackney, Thames News.
Some news in brief, and 4 Chelsea fans will spend Christmas behind bars after trouble in a Blackpool nightclub following their team's away win at Everton on Saturday. One was sentenced to 6 months youth custody. 4 others were remanded. A magistrate said he hoped Chelsea never win again if this is the trouble that is caused. An accountant accused of murder was freed on bail today by magistrates at Maidstone. Jadindra Pandya from Northfleet in Kent is accused of stabbing Charles Fordyce to death at Vintners shopping centre at the weekend. A hospital radio station which lost its equipment to thieves last week will be able to broadcast over Christmas after its plight was reported on Thames News. A Watford firm have lent Radio Kings at King's College Hospital in Denmark Hill all the equipment needed to get them back on the air.
The organisers of Christmas Line 84, the round-the-clock telephone advice service, say they're worried about the number of calls they've had from potential suicides, twice as many in 2 days as they had in 5 last year. Most of the calls, though, to 388 2388 are for routine information, and there'll be a fuller report in Help right after this programme. Police say they're worried about a 14-year-old Malaysian girl called Rose, who ran away from the house where she was staying at Shepherd's Bush at the weekend. She speaks little English, and it's thought she has little money and nowhere to stay. New figures show that rush hour traffic on the North Circular Road has increased despite the opening of the M25. The pressure group, Movement for London, say it underlines the need to improve the road.
For those already making plans for next year, put a date in your diary for the last week in November. That's when a comet that doesn't call very often is due to make a visit. The last time was in 1910, and one stargazer has already set up business in preparation for what some people call Halley's and others called Halley's, but we're told we should call Halley's comet.
Halley's Comet, yes, that is the correct pronunciation, was first seen in the year 240 BC, but it was Edmund Halley who saw it in 1682, who worked out that the famous space invader circled round the Earth every 76 years and would next come by in 1758. The comet's history is well documented, but it's because it often appears at awful times in our history that it's sometimes termed the headline writer's nightmare, or perhaps his dream, because it generally seems to foretell doom, death and disaster.
Comets throughout history have always been regarded as the harbingers of doom and the death of kings and that sort of thing. But since Edmund Halley predicted the return of this particular comet in 1758, of course a lot of the mystery has been washed away and has now become an object of tremendous scientific interest.
And scientists welcome the comet's appearance next November because within its fiery tail are the particles which make up our solar system. A consortium led by British Aerospace is even sending up a satellite to help unravel its mysteries. But for Brian Harper, founder of the Halley Comet Society and producer of comet merchandise and memorabilia, there's something actually magical about it.
Well, it is, I think, first of all, the realization that this majestic metronome of the sky kept swinging backwards and forwards about every 76 years with such utter predictability that characters like Nero and King Harold and Attila the Hun and that sort of thing were the people who saw it, and I would be seeing exactly the same phenomenon that they saw.
And you should be able to see the comet in November and December next year, and then in April 1986 when it finishes its swing around the world. After that, it won't come near the Earth again until July the 29th, 2061. Don't say you haven't been warned. Christopher Rainbow for Thames News.
So more news in brief now, and union leaders at Ford's say they think the machinist strike could be over on Friday. 250 workers have been in dispute for 5 weeks. Santa Claus was fined £10 at Clerkenwell today for wrecking a supermarket's display of salad cream. John Bristow, a voluntary worker, argued about parking his bicycle beside a window. And a London regiment, 300 years old in 1985, is trying to trace old soldiers for a grand reunion. The Royal Regiment of Fusiliers vanished in 1968 when it was merged with 3 other regiments.
British Rail are determined that those of us who've had to work today should go home with a little extra Christmas cheer at journey's end. More than 100 railway stations have already been decked out in festive style, and tonight, as commuters arrive back, there'll also be live Christmas carols on the platform.
British Rail don't like to feel they ever have a discordant relationship with their passengers, so with a sensitivity suitable to Christmas, they're welcoming home the weary travellers in a fashion that should prepare them well for the festivities to come, always assuming the festivities at the office party haven't got to them first. Here at Streatham Common and at more than 100 other stations, there's the daintily dressed tree and the timely reminder that Christmas is a time for giving, helped along by the Streatham Baptist Church Choir.
What do you think of this Yuletide welcome?
Terrific, terrific. Nothing wrong, nothing wrong. Fantastic.
What do you think of your welcome home?
Actually, my English language not so good, you know.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much. Very for you and for the
Oh, wow, it's very nice. Yeah, Merry Christmas.
All the money raised will be going to charity, about £38,000 so far. And as soon as word got out that Southern Region were mounting an exercise like this, the choir started queuing up to take their places in booking halls and on platforms all over the capital, determined that those souls who work today will have a cheering welcome home. Tricia Ingrams at Streatham Common, Thames News.
Well, now sport, and the Liverpool striker Michael Robinson has agreed terms with Queen's Park Rangers and will sign for them on Thursday. Here's Graham Miller.
Robinson, the Republic of Ireland international, will come south for a fee of £100,000. He met the Rangers coaching team, Frank Sibley and Bobby Campbell, at a motorway service area this afternoon. If he passes the compulsory club medical, he'll sign for Rangers on Thursday and make his debut on Saturday at Stoke. 1985 will be the most important year yet for British women's gymnastic champion Jackie McCarthy. With the European and World Championships coming up, it'll be the perfect chance to assess her progress and medal hopes for the next Olympic Games. Jackie from Romford is just 15. Her tremendous potential has already earned her a place as reserve in our last Olympic team. Now she says she's ready for the big time. She's the only girl in the country performing a full twisting straight Sukahara, the vault which won Mary Lou Retton from America the last Olympic gold. Jackie recently performed it brilliantly in competition, achieving a perfect 10 score, the first ever for a British gymnast.
It was very important. I've been working very hard on the vault. It's very difficult because, as you said, no one else in the country is doing it.
Before next year's major competitions, Jackie will help her club Rawdon defend its British team championship. Under coaches Yvonne and Len Arnold, the club is confident, especially now their fears of closure have been lifted. The local council have promised a new purpose-built centre, and that in itself can only help our gymnasts.
Our girls are going to school, finishing at 4 o'clock, then having to train in the evenings. Most of the Eastern Bloc countries and some of the